Reverse by Black K. Cat. Chapter 17. Avalate. We need to double our pace, Kakashi says practically the instant Tenzo and Itachi come to a halt beside them. Kurama is hours ahead of us at the least. Let's close the gap. I have never appreciated Soldier Bill so much in my life, is Shisui's cheerful contribution as he slings an arm over Itachi's shoulders. Itachi gives him a weary look but says nothing as he turns back to Kakashi and simply nods. Tenzo hums and adds a judicious, "Well, it's not as if Itachi and I covered all of the ground when the climb was leading us in circles. Once we pick up the trail, it shouldn't be too hard to make up the distance." Every minute counts, so Kakashi waves them into motion, headed north. It's a little after midnight, but the moon is almost full, and shinobi eyes are trained to work in the dark. With any luck, Kurama has been stopping for the night since he's saddled with 2 kids, and that will give them the time they need to catch up to him. The Suna patrols might have found something by now, he offers, because even for 4 Anbu, this is going to be a grueling pace. Letting Kurama escape is out of the question, though, and they've already spent too much time chasing ghosts. They need to find Naruto, or Kakashi is never going to be able to look at himself in a mirror again! There should be some kind of limit to how many people he can fail! But if there is, he apparently hasn't hit it yet! It's a rather terrifying thought. With a flicker of speed, Shisui bursts into existence beside him, leaving the other 2 well behind him. Automatically, Kakashi shoots him a glare, but the teenager just rolls his eyes. Yeah, save my chakra for the marathon, but this is important. It's about Itachi. Kakashi gives Shisui a long look, then casually twists his head a little to catch a glimpse of the other Uchiha. Itachi is at the back of the line, which isn't precisely uncommon, but he's also a shade paler than normal, and his eyes are blank where they're fixed on what's ahead of him. He's quiet, Kakashi finally allows. He's shaken, Shisui corrects, mouth pulling into a tight unhappy line. I know, my cousin, Captain. That's not just him climbing up. Something's happened. According to Itachi, he confronted the Kurama clone, but before anything could happen, it had vanished. Remembering the slightly gleeful way Kurama's other clone rubbed the misdirection in his and Shisui's faces, Kakashi is willing to believe that more happened than Itachi is entirely happy to reveal. Something Kurama said? He offers. Shisui huffs because it's hard to sigh when they're practically running flat out. Yeah, maybe. Just, we should keep an eye on him, Captain? He can get lost in his head if he thinks too much, and that's not good for anyone. Itachi's head is kind of a scary place. Kakashi became Anbu at 14, and he knows just how broken he is. To become an Anbu at 10! There's absolutely no doubt that Itachi is suffering from at least a little bit of battle horror, no matter how good a shinobi he is, or how much of a genius he is. With that in mind, he inclines his head and says quietly, Warn Tenzo too. This team is going back to Konoha in one piece or not at all. I'm not about to let anyone break on my watch. I know, Captain. Shisui gives him a small grateful smile. Why do you think I told you? He salutes, then slows, dropping back to run at Tenzo's side. Kakashi keeps a portion of his attention on the youngest member of their squad, but Itachi doesn't even seem to notice the interplay, which is a bad sign. No matter what his aims are, Kurama is a dangerous shinobi. If they go into an encounter with him distracted and divided, someone is going to get hurt, and Kakashi isn't optimistic enough to think that it will be Kurama. Fuji's path takes them across the narrowest part of Ame, skirting the hidden village in its rocky valley and dodging a handful of shinobi patrols. Kurama isn't certain whether Nagato is already the leader here, or if it's still Hanzo, but better safe than sorry. Honestly, they would be equally screwed regardless of who it was if Ame's leader did catch them. One-on-one, Kurama is fairly certain he can take either of them, but Hanzo defeated all 3 of the Sannin, and Nagato as Pain doesn't fight one-on-one. Better to just avoid all traces of civilization in that case. They have enough food left from raiding Gaara's cupboards in Suna to see them through a few more days of travel, and Kurama has nebulous plans to go hunting when they stop for the night. He considers, briefly, sending more clones out to hide their path, but he doubts Kakashi will fall for the same trick twice. The next best option is to increase their speed, but Fuji's already running her paws raw for them, and Kurama isn't about to ask her for more. If he could shift into his Bijou form, this would all be so easy! Kuma would feel like barely any distance at all. But there's little chance of that. And in all honesty, if shifting forms meant abandoning Naruto's body, Kurama isn't entirely sure he would. It's a bitter, macabre reminder, but it's still a piece of Naruto, even altered and changed to fit Kurama, and he's not about to throw that away. Kuramani! Kuramani! The cheery voice and the small hand tugging on his sleeve drove Kurama out of his thoughts, and he looks down to find blue eyes staring up at him, Naruto's neck craned around in a way that looks painful. Yeah, kid, he asks, a little surprised. Gaara and Naruto have spent the last 3 hours playing I Spy, more than happy to ignore Kurama's quietness. Look! Naruto orders, pointing ahead at them. It's a sea! Kurama blinks, then glances in the direction of Naruto's gaze and can't fight a smile. Not quite a sea, he says with a chuckle. That's Kusa. It's grass you're seeing, not water. You can see the similarity, though, especially since Naruto has never seen an actual ocean before. They're descending a hill with grass country spread out before them, and in the afternoon sun, the dark grass shines blue-green. Wind ripples the stalks in long, low waves that run from the edge of the grassland all the way to the horizon. It's a stark change from the rocky terrain of Ame or the forest of Kanaha, and Kurama raises his head, breathing in the smell of sun-warmed, wet earth and growing things. It's still winter here, but like in Ame, the bite of it is mellowed, turned to heavy rains rather than the cold of snow. I want to roll around in it, Fuji says a little wistfully, bouncing across an outcropping of rock and landing deftly on a stable patch of stone. She holds there, ears pricked up and nose twitching, and then sighs mournfully. I want to, but mud! Kurama can't help but laugh, because if he's learned one thing traveling with the vixen, it's that she's just as fuzzy as a cat where her pretty white coat is concerned. Yeah, that'd put a damper on things, he agrees. I bet the rivers are all snow melt too. Maybe later in the year you can come back. But I want to roll in the grass now, Fuji complains. Even so, she leaps down, launches herself off a small ledge, and lands as light as a feather on the edge of the grassland. Straight across Kuma, Kurama-sama? Kurama checks the position of the sun, then shakes his head. Northeast. Let's miss the Fire Country border. I don't know if they'll have shinobi patrolling, but I assume so. Better to avoid them. You can take them, Kurama-ni! Naruto says, cheerfully confident. Me and Gaara would help you! We would. Gaara insists, solemn but determined. He casts a worried glance at Kurama, then at Naruto, and says more softly, I can hurt people. I can make them stay away. I'll do it if you want me to, Kurama-ni. There is definitely absolutely nothing going soft and squishy in Kurama's chest. And if he finds it hard to swallow for a moment, that's just allergies. Something has to be blooming somewhere after all, and he's simply reacting to it. Clearing his throat, he reaches up to ruffle Gaara's hair as gently as he's able to. No, kid, don't do that for me. If you find something you're willing to kill to protect, that's fine. Do anything you can to hang on to it. But only if you want to. Got it? For a long moment, wide aquamarine eyes hold his, and then Gaara fists one tiny hand in Naruto's shirt and says firmly, I do. You're what I want to protect. And Naruto too. Me too! Naruto insists, very, very serious, but still smiling brightly. Kurama-ni, you're our precious person. Hokage says we always have to protect our precious people. It's part of the will of fire. There's no way for Kurama to win this argument, and honestly, he's not sure he wants to. With a soft chuckle, he tightens one arm around the boys, giving them a light hug. All right, I get it. My little warriors. Okay, Fuji, you get. The vixen huffs like the question is offensive. Of course I am. It's all flat, Kurama-sama. This isn't exactly going to be hard. Yeah. Because he's an equal opportunity jerk. Kurama leans forward and musses up the fur between her pointed ears. Get going, brats. And make sure you tell me if you need a break. Got it? Of course I will, Kurama-sama. Fuji answers, sounding distinctly like she's humoring him. Northeast it is. Everyone hang on. Beneath them, muscles bunch, And in a surge of lean strength, Fuji leaps forward, long legs eating up the ground. Her head is low, ears perked attentively, and Kurama keeps his eyes on the horizon, scanning the grassland for any hint of human presence. The nice thing about Kusa being mostly flat is that they'll see trouble coming from a long way off. Rather than returning to I Spy, which granted would be incredibly boring given the surroundings, Gaara attempts to teach Naruto a word game with debatable success. Naruto forgets about half the rules and makes up new ones as he feels like it, but Gaara doesn't seem to mind. Kurama keeps an eye on them in case of fraying tempers and possible tantrums. Always more dangerous with two baby Jinchuriki, even giving Gaara's repaired seal and Naruto's strong one. But they both seem happy enough. Since he doesn't need to distract them, Kurama is free to turn his attention to what's ahead of them. Namely, whatever trick Matatabi thinks she's going to play on him. Kurama will reluctantly admit that she's rather cunning, even if she's not a fox, and he's wary of whatever it is she's planning. He can't think what it could be, but in all likelihood, he'll end up going along with it since he still needs her to watch the kids more than he cares about any sort of dignity. The witch probably knows it, too. He wouldn't have even considered asking her otherwise, and she's familiar enough with his pride to realize that. What he can't figure out is what she wants, though. Not released from her host, since she apparently likes the woman, and Kurama can't imagine anything else that would appeal to a sentient construct of chakra. They're not exactly greedy creatures, any of them, and they have no use for human trappings. Practically any information Matatabi wants, she can get herself. The Biju might need a partnership with their Jinchuriki to fully access their mental world, but they can still communicate through it without that, even if it takes a bit of effort. And beyond those options, Kurama is coming up blank as far as ideas go. Well, he supposes he'll figure it out soon enough if they can manage to keep this pace. Lightning Country is about 2.5 days from here, maybe 3 if anything slows them down. And then it'll be another day to find Matatabi and her host. And then Kurama's fingers curl in Fuji's ruff, and it takes effort not to growl. 4 days at most, and he'll be able to start turning the tables on Akatsuki. Less than a week, and he can start making headway on the mission Naruto sent him back to accomplish. It's going to be sweet to destroy them Gedamazo, to take that much away from Kaguya, to start in on destroying her plans, reducing everything she set her hopes on to dust and ash. Kurama has no sympathy for the goddess. He'd happily carve her face to ribbons if she were standing in front of him, and then pull her heart, still beating from her chest, and feed it to her! She killed Naruto, destroyed everything precious to him. Naruto might have had mercy, felt understanding for the mad creature she's become, but Kurama never, ever will. The fury those thoughts invoke is a living thing. Kurama takes a deep breath and shakes it away, dragging his attention back to their surroundings. The only sign of their progress is the amount of grassland stretching out behind them, and the slow creep of the sun overhead. And if Kurama doesn't pay attention, it almost feels like they're not moving at all. He lets his mind go blank as Fuji runs, trying not to let himself dwell on dark thoughts, no matter how easy it is. Harder, he thinks with a faint smile, when red hair feathers over his cheek and brings to mind a familiar face in the mirror. It still hurts, Naruto's death, but it's a lot more bearable now. Simpler for him to face with the realization that Naruto would approve. A river parts the grass ahead of them, wide and slow-moving, with a handful of low shrubs to line the banks and a few scattered stands of trees. Kurama watches them approach, considering calling a break here so they can have an hour or so to eat. They're not likely to find a nicer spot, and it will give them an opportunity to refill their water bottles. The sharp ozone hot crackle of energy is his only warning! Faster than he's moved since Naruto stepped in front of Kakashi's Reikiri, Kurama throws himself forward over Fuji's head, already calling up his chakra! He's not overskilled with Doton Jutsus, always defaults to his affinities of wind and fire, but long practice with Kushina's favorite Doton and Suiton feeds into muscle memory. A single hand sign in the air, a hand on the earth as he touches down, and chakra flares! A wall of stone bursts from the ground to intercept the bolt of lightning, even as Fuji skids sideways, only just managing not to slam into the barrier. Go! Kurama snaps. Fuji, take them and run! The vixen doesn't bother arguing. Even as the stone falls away, she spins, bolting east at a pace that's easily double her normal. Naruto shouts something desperate and fierce, but Kurama doesn't have time to listen. He leaps forward with his claws bared, lashing out and down. The shockwave ripples out, slamming into the ground with enough force to make the attacker stagger, and Kurama takes ruthless advantage of the opening. He spins around another surge of lightning, then leaps. Power collects, spinning in a blur of black and purple, and Kurama slams the orb down hard. Chips of mass go flying, and he flips over and lands in a crouch, eyes fixed on the man before him. Kakuzu, he growls, rising to his feet. Didn't I kick your butt once already?
Akatsuki's treasurer bares his teeth in parody of a smile.
And here I thought I had killed you. Imagine my surprise to find that Kanaha just put a massive bounty on your head. Isn't that convenient? Now I get to kill you for destroying my masks, and I even get paid for it.
Kurama scoffs. He can't sense any of Kakuzu's other masks, so the bounty hunter likely only had time to make one. That's fine by him. He's not about to draw this out with Naruto and Gaara nearby.
As if a weak-ass bitch like you could take me down.
He mocks.
Without those masks of yours, you're just as mortal as anyone else.
Baring his teeth in a dangerous grin, he cracks his knuckles, then flexes his fingers and readies his claws.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Pale green eyes narrow, and Kakuzu brings his hands up. Fuck you, he growls. I'm going to slaughter you and use your heart to make a new construct. What do you think? Fire? Wind? How about you just stop talking?
Kurama calls up his chakra in a blood-red surge, lashing out. The shockwave follows the path of his blow, but Kakuzu dodges, spinning to the left. His thick gray threads shoot forward, and Kurama has to leap back and away. He doesn't let it slow him down, but shifts forward instantly, rolling underneath another thread and coming up with a high twisting jump. This time he uses wind, sharp as blades and wide enough to cover their battleground completely, and Kakuzu shouts in anger as the earth grunge fear. Threads fall away, cleanly cut. A moment later, he's right in front of Kurama, more threads gathering, and Kurama knows that if he stays where he is, he'll be overwhelmed. Ducking back and away, Kurama slides around 3 threads as they stab forward, throws himself under another harsh slash, and comes to his feet just behind Kakuzu's shoulder. The bounty hunter spins, fingers twisting into the signs for Dotonjutsu, but Kurama hurls himself forward, slamming a hard kick into the man's spine. Kakuzu goes flying forward, crashing heavily into the ground and rolling several times before he staggers back to his feet, expression pissed! I'll kill you, he hisses. Your heart is mine. Kurama laughs, mockingly stepping back and moving in a wide circle.
Sorry, but you're not quite my type, he retorts. I don't tend to go for the crazies.
Kakuzu snarls, wordlessly lunging for him again.
The thick threads of his genjutsu echo his limbs as he strikes at Kurama's head, but Kurama has more than enough time to gather his feet under him and jump, twisting through the threads and landing in a crouch, then immediately lashing out with one foot to drive it into the side of Kakuzu's knee. The missing nin bellows in pain and he goes down, and Kurama wastes no time slamming another shockwave down on top of him. Blood splatters and bone crunches, and Kurama laughs in vicious victory, dancing away from flailing limbs. You're 1,000 years too early to hunt me, asshole, he taunts. You're better off trying your luck with a lesser god. What, did Akatsuki get sick of all your failures and send you out to die? I've heard that twice can be counted as a pattern. First Taki, and now shut up. Kakuzu staggers back upright again, fury clear on his face. Leader wants to meet you, little bitch. He wants to know how you learned about us, and when he finds out, he's going to make you scream. If I don't kill you now, he'll do it eventually, but you're going to suffer first. Oh, that's not exactly good news. Kurama has to fight Dr. Grimace because he's confident in his power, but pain is not someone he wants to face without preparation. So, killing me now is out of the goodness of your heart. I'm touched. Kakuzu laughs at him. I just want your bounty and your heart, asshole. I couldn't care less how you die. But those 2 things, those are mine.
Great. A possessive obsessed maniac with murder on the brain. Kurama meets the nicest people. Not happening, he says flatly, flexing his fingers. Run back home to your master's mutt and keep jumping through their hoops. You're starting to bore me. Eerie eyes narrow, and for a long moment Kakuzu studies him. You're different, he says suspiciously. You've changed since last time. Got a new trick up your sleeve, bastard? Something shifts behind Kakuzu, and Kurama doesn't fight the wide grin that bears sharp teeth. Oh, you could say that. He lunges forward, claws outstretched, and Kakuzu shifts ready to meet him, threads rising. But before he can, Kakuzu trips, expression turning startled, and instinctively lashes out at a tendril of sand curled tight around his ankle. In the same moment, an orange blur leaps out of the grass and Naruto shrieks a war cry. It's echoed by a dozen other throats as more copies pour out from behind the shrubs, leaping onto Kakuzu and dragging his limbs down with the force of sheer numbers. Kakuzu's eyes go wide, but Kurama is already too close to stop, and he slams his palm into the bounty hunter's abdomen. Power surges, positive and negative in careful balance, and Kakuzu screams! Clones pop one after the other as his earth grunge fear strikes out, but blood is pouring from the gaping wound in his stomach and the movements are clumsy, convulsive. There's power in them, but it's desperate, undirected. Somewhere behind them is another shout, unfortunately familiar. Kurama curses, snatches the original Naruto off the ground where he is thrown and leaps backwards out of range. Fuji! He shouts, and her pale shape rises from the tall grass like a wraith, immediately bounding to his side. Gaara is beside her, clearly having dismounted so they could sneak back and surprise Kakuzu, and Kurama wastes no time grabbing him by the collar and tossing him onto the fox's back. He leaps on as well, Naruto still tucked under one arm, and twists to bring one hand, slashing down. Chakra flares, fire sparks, and with a shrieking howl, wind screams across the prairie. The handful of sparks becomes a sheet of flame, tall and broad and blisteringly hot, and Kurama doesn't wait around for the freak squad to react. It gnaws viciously at him, leaving Kakuzu behind when victory is so close, but he can't risk capture, not now, not with an end in sight. This time, when he shouts at Fuji to run, she does him one better. Foxfire flares, curling incandescently around her paws, and she leaps straight up into the air. It catches like she has wings on her feet, and with a long, lithe bound, she's flying, soaring through the sky without anything to slow her headlong rush. Kurama twists his fingers in white fur, prays that she's strong enough to keep it going until they've put space between themselves and their pursuers, and doesn't allow himself to look back as the section of burning grassland falls away behind them.